let's give the name, I'm restricting this right now to a particular category of entity. So this talk is going to be about properties. If you don't think there are properties, then you can automatically translate everything I say into kinds or states of affairs or something. Whatever your favorite category of entity is, you can translate it into that category. Let's call Q properties, or Q states of affairs, or whatever. Properties like that are not physical. So, being beautiful is a Q property. Having a value of $50 is a Q property. Representing pictorially a young woman standing behind the bar at the Folie Bergère is a Q property. Being holy is a Q property. I'm prepared to argue that being square or being spherical is a Q property. And so then we have P properties, which are physical properties. The first thing to settle, I think, is to what the conditions for being a Q property are. In other words, when people are physicalists, what are they claiming about themselves? I like the question because it hit very close to, I think, what has to be the right answer. And that is, a physicalist is someone who believes that reality can be exhaustively explained and described using solely the concepts of the fundamental natural sciences, including physics, and chemistry if they're not reducible, etc. So a physicalist is someone who thinks that the language of physics can strictly and literally describe everything that is so, everything that is real. Now, so physicalism then is a kind of anti-realism about Q properties. It is saying that either Q properties are a form of M property or they're not real. So the most obvious anti-realist position here, of course, is on Q properties is eliminative. Eliminative physicalism. I take eliminative physicalism to be the refusal to describe anything as existing which is not describable, and also the program of substituting any concepts or terms in the Q realm and describe reality only in terms of the P terms, the P concepts. I'm switching between M and P, aren't I? Physical, material, M properties. This is going to leave us without much to say. Even the most committed eliminativists tend not to be thoroughgoing. Each eliminative physicalist will deny some Q realities but affirm others. The Churchlands do not countenance propositional attitude properties, but they do countenance experiential properties. Dennett refuses to countenance consciousness, but he does accept non-conscious cognitive states. So he's going to talk mentalies with regard to unconscious cognitive states. Difficult to think of any major contemporary philosopher who holds that there are absolutely no mental properties, no believing, no experiencing, no consciousness. One imagines the illuminative physicalists walking through the Louvre saying, "Oh my, another piece of stretched canvas covered with paint of a certain, of a certain chemical composition. Yet another stretched piece of canvas containing, covered with paint of a certain chemical composition. Oh my, I like that one too." So it's difficult to think of any major contemporary philosopher who holds that there are absolutely no Q properties. I mean, I think deep down when the Churchlands go to the Louvre, they probably enjoy the art. They go to the Cortlandt Gallery and they see Manet's Bar de Folie Bergère, and they are struck by the pictorial representation of the young woman standing behind the bar. So then there is reductionist physicalism. Reductionist physicalism is probably the most influential anti-realism about Q properties historically. It affirms that there are Q properties, doesn't it? It's just that they are really physical properties instead. But reductive physicalism does constitute a denial that there's anything distinctive about the Q realm. The most prevalent, the two historically most important versions of reductive physicalism were, of course, Democritean, Hobbesian, Holbachian, atoms and void identity theory, right? Any Q property is going to be identical to some physical property. And then, of course, functionalism would be the other more recent, historically important version of reductive physicalism. Identity theory, atoms and void identity theories. For any Q property, there is some physical property P to which it's identical. I'm not going to spend much time on that because I think Kripke and Putnam have given us excellent reasons for thinking that type identity theory is just not going to work. So we'll move on to functionalism. If we want to come back to type identity theory, then I think they sort of join behaviorists as people who have no future. Functionalism is a thesis that, the prevailing form of reductionist physicalism is functionalism. And I take functionalism to be Q properties are reducible to certain second order properties. Which exist, those second order properties exist in virtue of being realized by more basic first order properties. So functionalism is the thesis that Q properties are reducible to certain second order properties. They are identified with certain second order properties. which exist in virtue of being realized by some more basic first-order properties. The classic example here is we're a kind of mixed marriage. I am a Windows person, and my wife is. I just got her a big iMac. So you know, these people find each other and they marry and struggle with. Now, I sometimes can switch back and forth between platforms because you can do Word documents on iMacs. You know. Now, what I assume is that in Windows, in Word for Windows, there is a bolding function that you can use on text. And I assume that there is also a bolding function you can use in iMac for text. Now, so bolding text is a Q property. It's related to a certain second-order property in the software but its physical realization is going to be completely different, I would assume, in both machines, right? That is, the realization of the bolding function is going to be a completely different piece of code in each case. So, thus functionalism. So, has everyone seen Battle LA? No reason to see it, although I thought it was cool. Yeah, but there's one scene that was interesting to philosophers. If you know the story, aliens come down and invade the world, and this group of soldiers that are fighting them in Los Angeles, and so they capture one. They can't. The interesting thing about the movie is you know no more at any time than Marines in this movie know, and they don't know where these creatures come from, and in particular they don't know how to kill them. So they capture one alive. And in this awesome scene, they vivisect it. They try to figure out how to kill it. And so the medic is there and he's saying, it's got no temporal lobe, it's got no parietal lobe, it's got no Q fibers, nothing like that, right? And so, and so they're sticking it and poking it and prodding and ripping bits off, you know, trying to see what's going to make it die. The creature is manifestly in agony, right? But apparently, alien pain is a different is realized in the alien different, but he's clearly in pain. So, pain would be a good example here of a functional state in living organisms. It's going to be realized in different organisms differently. So, the second-order properties are definable then in terms of the interactions among the first-order properties that realize them. Strong functionalism. Here. Strong functionalism is the thesis that the realizers of Q properties are necessarily, and by necessarily here we mean metaphysical necessity, right? Are necessarily first order physical properties. Or, perhaps more generally, the realizers of Q properties are necessarily physical properties. So they belong in the general ontological category of physical property. This is obviously an exceedingly strong metaphysical thesis. What grounds do we have for believing that strong functionalism is true? Most versions of physicalism, to be a physicalist, I assume, would mean to say that if physicalism is going to be a metaphysical position, right, and not simply a methodological maxim for how to go about explaining things where we live, in which case it's philosophically harmless. I mean, the former chair of the physics department was a methodological physicalist, and he also played the organ in his church, right? So that would be a philosophically harmless view. But if physicalism is going to be a philosophical position, then physicalism is going to have to be a metaphysical view. So it's going to have to be something like, everything that happens in this and all possible worlds are explainable in the terms and concepts of physical theory, the physical sciences, as they are represented in the actual world. What reason do we have for thinking that is true? So strong functionalism is in fact a stronger thesis than physicalism itself, both in its ontological commitments and in its epistemic status, in the reasons we have for thinking that it might be the case. So therefore, physicalism cannot support a thesis, strong functionalism, that is in fact metaphysically stronger than it is.